All right, so this is Diaspora Scholars TV, where we showcase stories about African scholars and anybody associated with African studies in the US and in North America in general. So I've just met Tavy, who's the Associate Director of the African Studies Program at IU Bloomington, right?
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. I'm still amazed and a bit in shock that there's a lot of diversity.
Yes.
Is this what you guys do here?
Absolutely. So while we are at IU, within an academic setting, one of the things that we feel is extremely important is pushing knowledge out.
Wow.
Right, out of academia. And so we are a national African resource center. There's about 10 of us in the United States. And one of the main things that we do is push out that good information, that accurate information about Africa and the global African diaspora.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a National African Resource Center. I didn't know that. So you said there are about 10 in the US?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
And you remind me, I went to the African Studies I think department or something at the University of Wisconsin.
Yes.
Yeah, and the first thing they said, like, you're from Indiana? I said, yeah. Have you been to Bloomington? I said, yes. I said, that's a very good.
Yes.
So your accolades of this department and program has gone far and wide, I can tell you.
Yes. So it's really interesting when you think about the fact that this has been a Center for African Studies in the United States for over 60 years.
Oh my goodness.
We were one of the very first national resource centers. They weren't called that at first, but one of the first centers for obtaining and getting accurate information and dispersing it. Right?
Okay.
And so it was actually former President Wells, who was one of the individuals who said, this Bloomington is going to be a center, a crossroads, right, for global cultures. And then I was very lucky to with one of the people I studied, so I'm an IU alum.
You're an IU alum?
I'm an IU alum. This is my second time in Bloomington.
I also just met Dr. Ofori, who told me he's an IU alum. And and,
so we have a saying in Bloomington.
What is this thing that you guys do? Tell me.
We have a saying in Bloomington because you come here and you find community, right? And so there are a large percentage of us who are bloomerangs.
Yeah.
The idea of a boomerang, you throw it, it comes back.
Bloomerangs.
Yes, bloomerangs. So we come back to Bloomington. So this is actually where I did my PhD because it was the top university.
Which year was that?
So I came in fall of 1989. Now you're getting my age, right? I was a year after Dr. Alwia Omar. So she came here the year before.
You guys are trailblazers. You've done a lot.
Yeah. And so we went our own ways, and then she was eventually asked to come back to lead the African languages here, and I was eventually asked to come back and be the associate director, right? And so as we were talking about the National Resource Center, we are actually funded currently by a Title VI.
Thank God,
through U.S. Department of Education, right? And it is to disperse this information. So one of the core things that we do is try and break down those ideas, that latent knowledge, what people think they know about Africa.
Yeah, yet it's totally either wrong, misguided, incomplete, inaccurate.
Yes. And so we do that on a number of fronts. One, of course, because we're at the university, we're teaching the African language, we're teaching African history, right? But then because we're a national resource center, we're also reaching outward. So if you don't want freshmen coming in wondering if there are cities on the continent of Africa,
or if Africa is a country,
or believe it's a country, then you need to reach back out to the teachers, right? Yeah. So for me, having studied, I didn't have a single day growing up learning about Africa in my K through 12, so that's kindergarten through high school. It wasn't until I got to college that I was, interested and started to take classes, exploring as a liberal education invites you to do. And I actually got angry.
wow.
Because I thought, why in the world?
What inspired you to want to be able to get to know?
Well, so, I actually grew up in a very diverse community outside of Los Angeles. I was born in Santa Monica, California, in LA. Went to school at UC San Diego, and, just had amazing professors there. I was taking every class I could. And just stunned. What drew me in at first was because I had been a painter, was African arts.
Oh, I see the connection.
Yes. And so I was looking at these works, and every single detail, the material, every detail has a meaning associated with it and a purpose, right? Yeah. And so I was looking at this iconography, like the study of everything that makes this artwork, and I thought, this is incredible. And that's when I got angry. Right?
Wow.
Because I had never been introduced to this. I had to be, a freshman.
So now, so there you go, and since that time, you've never left it.
No, I came as a biology major.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I went to the UC San Diego because I wanted to be an oceanographer. They have the Scripps Institute of Oceanography.
A very good one, yeah.
Yeah, but by the time I was a junior, and here's for all those out there who, don't know what they're doing when they come in or change their major. It's okay. By the time I was a junior, I had studied African arts, anthropology. I also was very interested in the connections of other regions of the world, right? So pre-Columbian Americas, Northwest Coast, the Kwakiutl, etc. Because I really wanted to understand those cultures that I had been denied learning.
Global mindset.
Yes, exactly, right. But unfortunately, Americans, or those who come to America, they sometimes don't get that, or they give up what they have, right? So we have all these incredible individuals I'm looking around who speak a language, a heritage language. And like my father, they may give that language up becoming American. So I didn't know my father had been fluent in French until I was in college.
Oh, really?
Really. Right?
There's something was missing, right?
Exactly.
And there's a way to change that through such programs.
Yes. We don't want to continue the old joke of what do you call a person who speaks multiple languages, right? Multilingual, 2 languages, bilingual, 1 language, American.
Oh. I didn't see that one coming. I've heard of it before.
So we want to change that.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, and we really want students,
particularly in the modern times, everything is simply a global village right now.
Yes, and that's the important thing, right? Is what we're focusing on is having IU students as well as teachers and advisors at the high school and the college level understand global competence, because in their lifetime, the majority population on Earth will be, as you know, Africa-born.
Yes.
Right?
Eventually.
And for those in the know, right, the center of cellular communications and telecommunications, all of that is not in Northern California.
No.
It's on the continent of Africa.
It's in Africa.
Yeah. And I remember, more than a decade ago, talking to students about how Forbes magazine was saying that if you wanted to be in international business, or even in business in the U.S. with a global outreach, you better understand how to work with individuals on the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
Right? That was more than a dozen years ago.
Wow, that was more than a dozen years. I like the concept of, you said, global competence. We have to be globally competent.
Yes. And
it seems like the future will make us like we will not have any choice.
Exactly. If
you want to be able to compete or be better or even just survive, you have to be globally competent.
Right. And we have to break free of our biases that we grew up with, right? So for example, when I was growing up, no one would have considered that China would have been a global power economically and politically, right?
I know what you mean, because I remember studying world history, and it wasn't really featuring, and
it wasn't really world history.
It wasn't world history.
Yeah.
Now it's current history.
Yes. But the thing is that now American students are catching up, with very few of them studying Chinese, right? Either in high school or now in college. Well, the continent of Africa has been developing faster over the past 30 years than China did. right? And because of our latent ideas, what we think we know about the African continent, we dismiss learning about it. We dismiss the complexities and interrelationships about Africa. We don't understand that it has always been connected with the rest of the world.
For a long time.
Throughout history. Right? You know, when I talk
actually, now that I think of it, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah. You know, when I show
all continents.
Exactly. You know, when I show maps of the trade network in Eastern Africa into China that start by at least 500 BC, right? 500 BC, because of East Africans' technology with the sails, right?
Yeah.
With those particular types of boats, they were able to tack back and forth, and they traveled all the way down into China. Right? But do we learn this? No. Right? We're able to say, oh my gosh, you know, my class is way out in Timbuktu.
Yeah. There was a lot of trade across the Sahara Desert, and salt was currency.
Yeah. So we all know Timbuktu, and that's because it was that center of trade and learning. Right?
And learning.
Learning, yes. And, you know, we are discovering in the past 10 years, we're discovering more and more literature written by Africans, for Africans, using Arabic.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. So this is a technique called Ajami, where they would use Arabic script to write African languages.
Wow.
So Western scholars, right, might speak Arabic, or they might speak an African language, but not both. So they were looking at these documents.
Not both,
So they were looking at these documents and thinking it was bad Arabic.
Wow. Not knowing that it was a well-accepted form of business language.
Yes. So, you know, we have these myths, right, that there was no writing in Africa. That's not true, right? Let's just take Egypt. Yeah. Right? Everyone knows about the various...
I've met people, I've interviewed some people who are not even very sure whether Egypt is in Africa.
And that comes from that Western idea where they saw civilization. It could not be denied. So you have to remove it from the narrative of Africa, right? So Egypt becomes a basis for Greece, Rome, and onwards. Right? Instead of looking at it as essentially at its foundation an African culture,
it's an African culture,
which was then overlaid because of all those complex networks of trade with connections from the Middle East, from Asia, from North Africa, from the Mediterranean, from Sub-Saharan Africa, that makes it the Egypt of today.
Oh my goodness, this is amazing. We can't stop, showing this on our show, because this is Diaspora Scholars TV, where we bring you stories about Africa. I'm amazed that there's even a particular Arabic. What was its name again?
Ajami.
Ajami.
Yes. So using the Arabic script to be able to write African languages, such as Hausa, Bamana, for Fulbhe or Fulani, right?
Fulani. Oh, that's the Fulani.
Yeah. So all of these various languages, right? And that was that connection that has always existed with North Africa, southern Spain, Europe, right, across into the Arab Peninsula and down into Africa. We've denied that. We've created this fiction that there was almost a wall through the Sahara Desert. Yet we know the trans-Saharan trade.
Trans-Saharan trade was taking place. If you want to find out more, reach out to the Africa Studies program at Indiana University, Bloomington, and you can also reach out to the Associate Director, Dr.
Tavy Aherne.
You heard it right. She's been here. She's actually an alumni of IU. I'm even a little bit surprised. I do my homework. This time round, I didn't know about that. So we want to thank you so much for agreeing